Okay guys, good news and bad news today. The good news is we're making room for more stuff. The bad news is that some of our cherished items are going to be going away, and some already are. So let me explain. We're considering looking at some new gear, and gear costs money, so we're looking at things to make room and to sell. And we came to some conclusions. Not everything's final yet, and I'll show you actually one decision that we almost made that we pulled back from. As some of you may know, we do have this full spectrum D810. Now, we've got a whole video on what full spectrum D810 means. Long story short, it means that the infrared and UV blocking filters that are normally in the sensor, in your camera, in front of the sensor, have been removed, allowing the camera to see a full spectrum of light, everything that the sensor can support, which is beyond the visible range. We've got many filters for that from LifePixel, but recently, we started working with a company called Kolari, who sent us 3 filters to work with and to share about with all of you. One, which is very nice for our upcoming Yellowknife trip, is a hydrogen alpha filter. And we've already seen the difference with our astrophotography to date, that it cuts out the haze and the reflected terrestrial light. So we get a nice pure view of stars and objects in the sky in the Milky Way. We haven't done much with it, but we've done enough with it so far to see the results and to see that it's making a difference. Now, 2 other Kolari items that we're trying out are an aerochrome. Let me get the right one here. It's called the IR chrome filter, but it's designed specifically for a full spectrum camera to mimic the look of the little known, little used Kodak aerochrome slide infrared film from days gone by. And it produces the most interesting and wonderful infrared effects. And for those of you who shoot infrared or full spectrum, the most profound thing that I've discovered with this IR chrome filter is there's no white balance adjustments needed. I'm getting the IR look straight out of the camera, which is one less step. And anytime I can have one less step, I love it. And they've also sent us this ultraviolet light band filter, which will, infrared's on one side of the visible spectrum. I'm not smart on this stuff, but I know infrared's on one side and ultraviolet is on the other side. And to date, we've worked mostly on that infrared side. So it will be very interesting to see what that produces. We've done a little bit of work on that, but more to come. Now, why am I talking about this? Because this 24 millimeter and 35 millimeter lens, these old Nikon AFD primes, these were on the chopping block. And it's absolutely wonderful now with the small step-up ring to bring these to 52 millimeters to the 58 millimeters of these 2 filters and have them available and ready to go for the effect that we want. So we've got a 24 and 35 millimeter, 35 f2, 24 millimeter f2.8. Those were gone and they're back from the dead. And I expect that we'll also use those filters with either our 50 millimeter AFD or our 50 millimeter f1.8 G lens as well. The bread and butter of our full spectrum setup has been the f-mount 24 to 70 as well, where we've used many of those LifePixel filters, stepping that up from 77 to 82 millimeters, which is what we've standardized on for most of our filters. But these 58 millimeter filters I love with our small prime lenses. More to come on those filters and working with these prime lenses, but I did want to let you know that we struggle with this. It's really easy to make decisions to bring gear in. It's more difficult for us to make decisions that sends gear out. So we did find actually a very cool reason to hold on to some of those older prime lenses. Now let's get to the main topic today, which is some of the items that I hate to say that we are getting rid of. Number one, we've already gotten rid of our Canon SL2. Now, we know a lot of you have seen our Canon SL2 review, and many of you even bought the camera based on that review. We love the SL2. Don't take that the wrong way. We just don't do much with Canon these days, and Canon has gone into their mirrorless system as well, the EOS R system. So the SL2 just didn't have a fit for us anymore, given the 2 Z series bodies that we have, given the full spectrum body, given some of the other things that we're talking about, given the Fujis that we've been trying out. It just hasn't gotten picked up very often. someone else may as well have it. So along with that, the SL2, like I said, it's already gone. The ultra wide, let's see, the 10 to 18 here, we don't have a camera for it anymore. If we do Canon in the future, it'll be with the EOS R system, more likely than not. So this just doesn't have a place. We've got the 14 to 30Z ultra wide, which we absolutely love. We were trying it out and we actually ended up purchasing it. So this guy just doesn't have a place anymore. And that's the same with the 24 millimeter and the 40 millimeter prime lenses, the 24 for crop sensors, the 40 millimeter for full frame. I love these little pancake lenses, but again, no body for them. And if we do Canon again, it'll likely be mirrorless. So these have to go over here. The next is more challenging, and we're hedging a little bit. We actually have 2 of these Nikon V1 bodies, and they have hung on for a very, very long time in our collection. And part of that is they're very small, very nimble cameras, 10 megapixel, but very high quality images. And they take the same battery as that D810, as our D500. They can use the battery that goes into the Nikon Z6 and Z7. So it's easy to throw in when traveling as just a small alternative that uses the same batteries. We don't need an additional charger. We bring plenty of spare batteries anyway, so there's always a battery to put in here. This white V1, we have a white one and a black one. This white V1 is in better shape, so it's probably the one that's going to go. It came in a kit with a 10 millimeter lens. It will probably leave here with that 10 millimeter f2.8 lens. A couple of the other lenses are this 18.5 f1.8, which works a lot like a 50 millimeter lens on a full frame, and the 10 to 30 millimeter kit lens, and the 30 to 110 telephoto lens. Now we are keeping one of the V1 bodies, and I have a real fondness for the 6.7 to 13 lens as a compact ultra wide setup. We were also keeping the FT1 adapter so that for cases, special cases, telephoto, and we can use our f-mount lenses on our Nikon 1 body, the one that we will keep. Also, we did have great ambitions with this power zoom, power drive 10 to 100 one system camera for a 1 series camera. This is a lot of lens here, and it works great from a cinematic perspective for video. We don't do a lot of video with the V1. It's not 4K. We bought this one. 4K wasn't really the standard. It just doesn't have a place. It's a beautiful lens, but it's going, and we're going to keep that very lean setup for our one system setup, which will be basically 1 body, 1 lens, and 1 adapter. Now, a couple of the F-mount items. Most of what is back here is F-mount items, and we're keeping both of them. But just to give you some insight, this is the original F-mount first generation teleconverter 1.7X. And as digital SLRs and mirrorless have gotten progressively better from a pixel and clarity perspective, this first generation teleconverter more and more shows its weaknesses. We're really at the point from a sensor perspective where we get more out of our 70 to 200 f2.8, which we've used this with most often. We get more out of it just by shooting and cropping than basically pre-cropping with this adapter. In other words, the optics are better in those newer lenses with cropping without any additional adjustment compared to using this teleconverter on the end. This 105 millimeter f2.8 micro lens, it doesn't work. We do have the 60 millimeter that we use with our ES1 film capture, basically scan your film using your DSLR or mirrorless camera. That really likes the 60 millimeter micro lens, which we've purchased. We had picked up this 105 millimeter secondhand, and it doesn't autofocus anymore. Sometimes if I mess with it enough, I can get 1 or 2 autofocus frames out of it, but it's really not doing the job at all for us. So this is going to be like a parts special when we do get rid of this one, which will be very soon. So there's a quick rundown. I know there's a lot here that we're getting rid of. There's certainly plenty that we're keeping, and we have some interesting plans for some new gear in the very near future. But I just wanted to give you some insight on what you might not see anymore from us, a couple of items that came back from the dead due to those Kolari filters, and just some insight into our thought and decision-making process, which if you've ever done it and you love cameras and gear like we do, you know it's very, very painful. I still want to reconsider like half of these, but I think I'm over it now and I think I'm ready to let some of them go. Let me ask you guys, have you ever kind of thinned out the herd a little bit and made some tough decisions? And how did that work? Did you end up getting rid of the gear, or did you find some ways to hold on to the gear like I did with a couple of the items that I have here? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks, everybody.